So I somehow have never talked about Pokemon on this channel, which is weird because I play all of these games to death. Almost all of these games. Anyway, I've been putting a lot of time into Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, and I kinda wanted to make a quick little video talking about them. This isn't scripted, so it's probably not gonna be as organized as my usual stuff, but since I'm putting so much time in these games, I felt like they were worth talking about while I'm finishing up my next script. And I also wanted to thank you guys for all the love and support that you've shown on my last video. I almost didn't even make that, but it ended up being the highest performing video since I've made this channel, so thanks again for all the likes and the comments and sharing with your friends. I usually like to start things off on a positive note and then focus on the not so hot stuff, so that's exactly what we're gonna do, and I think we should start off with what I think is most people's favorite part about this, which is the fact that it's a completely open world Pokemon game. They've toyed around with this in previous games where you can kinda go to different towns after certain badges, but it's completely and actually open world this time, which I think is kind of a big deal. Also, something worth mentioning is that I had already beaten the game when I decided that I wanted to make this video, so almost everything of what you're seeing is post-game. It's so easy to lose hours of your life just roaming through Paldea, discovering new Pokemon and towns, and I feel like this is what Pokemon should feel like. Something a little weird that comes as a byproduct of the game switching to open world is that you no longer have to fight every trainer you run into. And since it's pretty easy to overlevel just by playing the game, I didn't ever really feel the need to fight them either. They do try to incentivize you by rewarding you at the Pokestops for beating a certain amount of trainers in an area, but I probably only fought about 10 of them on my way to becoming champion. There is an intended order in which you're supposed to do the gyms and the other challenges, but if you want to book it to the 8th gym and try it with level 5 Pokemon, you can do that. I know there are people that like the fact that you can run into trainers and Pokemon that are 20, 30 levels higher than you, and while I do like the fact that you can run into higher level Pokemon, I kinda wish that at least the gyms were scaled. I think from a storytelling perspective, it would be so much cooler if, let's say you went to the Ghost Gym first, and they only had like a Ghastly and a Shuppet, but they were your friend's 7th gym badge, and they had like a fully evolved Gengar and Frostlass and just a stacked team of fully evolved Ghost Pokemon. In my opinion, I feel like that would be so much cooler than what they have now. Speaking of gym leaders, I also like that we're moving away from the basic gym formula. This time around, each gym has a special challenge, and while I admittedly thought most of them were kinda stupid, I do like that they're trying something new. I like a lot of the new Pokemon here too. I've recently gotten out of the mindset of I need to find 6 Pokemon that I like and only use them, and I had a couple substitutes throughout my first playthrough, and I even made a completely separate team for the post-game content. That being said, there are definitely a couple really lazy evolution Pokemon.
How did it even make it to live servers? How did they think that was okay to even put it in the game?
But all in all, I really like the new batch that we've gotten. I've also really been enjoying the weird evolution methods that they've come up with, like Rellor having to walk a certain amount of steps using the Let's Go method to evolve, or having to defeat Bisharps holding the leader's crest to get King's Gambit. I don't think there's anything wrong with having Pokemon evolve just by level up, but I did think it was fun using these weird alternative methods. They've also added more detailed textures to the entire Pokedex. You can see fur on certain Pokemon, and metallic Pokemon actually look like they're made of metal. These aren't Unreal Engine 5 textures or anything, but I think the subtle changes go a long way in making the Pokemon look a lot better. Scarlet and Violet also have some pretty top tier character designs. There's usually 1 or 2 characters that have like OD designs in Pokemon games like Cynthia or Marnie, but I was surprised at how many of the teachers and gym leaders I immediately fell in love with. Geeta in particular is probably my favorite champion design since Cynthia, which makes it all the more sad when you finally fight her and her team is kinda bad. I would say this is also probably the best story that we've gotten in Pokemon, period. There are 3 different story paths that all converge into one when you get to the end of the game, and I never thought I would be this invested in a Pokemon story. Like, these are usually games that I press A on to skip through dialogue, but I was reading every line here. And the final area and boss actually change a lot based on the version that you have, which is something that you usually don't see in these games. The music in Pokemon games is always usually pretty good, but a lot of these songs go stupid hard. I especially like the Spanish influences in a lot of the music since the Paldea region is based on Spain. I also think terrestrialization is the coolest gimmick we've gotten so far, at least in terms of what it allows you to do in a Pokemon battle. Think about switching into, let's say, a Garchomp, knowing that it has a huge weakness to ice, and then it terrestrializes into an ice type, basically making you waste a turn. You could have an entire Pokemon team with weird Terra types that cover their weaknesses or make certain moves more powerful, and I think it's just a really fun mechanic. The gym leaders also make really good use of terrestrialization by like sending out a Staraptor and then terrestrializing it to a pure normal type, so you want to use a fighting type, but then you remember that it still has stab flying moves, and I feel like it just makes you think a little bit more than you've ever had to with the gym leaders. I still want to mention that I think it's time that we move on from single type gyms. Just make the gym leaders tough trainers that have like actually competitive and balanced teams. And the last thing that I want to talk about in the positive section is some of the quality of life changes that they've made. It's super easy to EV train and change the natures of your Pokemon, and you can even change your moves just by examining your Pokemon now. There's also some settings hidden in the options menu, like immediately sending Pokemon to boxes or not being asked to learn new moves, that just make things move a little faster. And that's actually going to be the first thing that we talk about in the negatives, is that this game still feels really sluggish. Pokemon has always had this problem of like the battles and the animations feeling so slow, and it's not really any better here. Even when you're just like out navigating in the open world, it feels like it takes an entire year to move your camera around you. They also took away a lot of the quality of life stuff that they've added in the previous games. There was absolutely no reason for them to take away set mode, but they did, just because. And something that I have huge problems with is the fact that there's no overworld shiny sparkle anymore. I've heard that there are people that like this because it makes the shinies more elusive, since you really have to pay attention to everything on your screen, but you're really trying to tell me that in a dark cave, I'm supposed to be able to tell the difference between this and this?
Corporate needs you to find the differences between this picture and this picture. They're the same picture.
Not to mention the fact that Pokemon are true to scale here, so good luck finding a lot of the tiny ones. There's not a chance in hell I'd have seen this fucker if I was playing on handheld. For as much as I like the story here, no voice acting again is a real shame. A lot of people complained about this in Sword and Shield, and I kinda figured that they would learn their lesson, but I guess not. One moment in the game that stood out to me is when you get to Area 0 and your party's talking to each other. For some reason they chose white text on this really bright background, and there's no way for me to like actually read that while I'm watching where I'm going. I could swear one of the trailers that they released had voice acting in it, so I just knew that it was gonna be in the game, but I can't find it anymore, so maybe I made that up. The GTS hasn't been in the last few games, which I still think is really annoying. I like completing the Pokedex, and it's so much more of a hassle without the GTS. Granted, it's not impossible if you use Reddit, but I almost didn't even try to complete it this time. I was lucky enough to find a generous soul that was willing to trade me all the Scarlet exclusives without even asking for anything in return. Shout out to Mike, if you're watching this, you're a real one. But if it wasn't for him, I probably would have just moved on to playing a different game. The menus are also really confusing here. What happened to just pressing one button and then you have everything on that one menu? Now you have one button for the map, the Pokedex, and your trainer card, and another button for everything else. And even 70 hours in, I'm still pressing the wrong button to do the thing that I want to do. Of course, probably the thing that people are most upset about is the performance issues. For whatever reason, this game runs a lot better in handheld mode, and that's mostly what I played in, so I didn't get any of the crazy graphical glitches that people are getting, but my game has crashed a couple times. And one of the times it crashed was when I was doing the stakes to get the legendaries, and I didn't have autosaves on, so I ended up wasting like 20 or 30 minutes backtracking trying to find which stakes I already had. And the fact that I have to worry about the game crashing at literally any moment when I'm shiny hunting kinda makes me not want to do it. I did play a little bit in dock mode while I was recording, so I did kind of get to experience what people are talking about when they say the game slows down to a crawl when you're in water or in a sandstorm, but I do feel like this is stuff that they could fix with updates. That's not excusing the game launching in this state, because it definitely shouldn't have, but hopefully they can get to fixing this sooner rather than later. Surely you guys didn't think that I was gonna make a video and not talk about the customization. Unfortunately, it's not good stuff this time. Overall, the customization took a huge hit here. It's bad to the point that you can't even wear hats if you have certain hairstyles. Some of my favorite parts about the newer Pokemon games is going to a new town and seeing if they have a clothes shop and then seeing what clothes they have, and this feels like a huge fall from grace. There were so many customization options in Sword and Shield, like you literally had layers to customize. And what happened to the different ball throwing animations in Sun and Moon? I'm not even really mad about the school uniform aesthetic, but we needed a lot more options. Preferably they would let us choose different color pants and shirts, but honestly if they just added jackets to the game, I feel like that would do a lot for the customization. As is the case with every game, there's some good and bad with this one. It feels like we keep inching closer and closer to that Breath of the Wild caliber Pokemon game, but it seems like for every big thing they add, they take a couple things away, and unfortunately I don't think we're ever really gonna get that game. I watched a couple YouTube videos that explain why Gamefreak doesn't just give themselves the time they need to give us the legendary Pokemon game that we want, and I'll link them in the description because I think that they're a really good watch if you want to understand why these games keep dropping the ball the way that they do. But let me know what you guys are thinking about the games down below. If you've made it this far, I'm going to assume that you liked the video, so do me a favor and leave a like for me. If you really like the video and you want to see whenever I upload, you can subscribe to the channel for more content like this. Thank you for sticking around to the end, and I'll see you in the next one.